Hello and welcome to our September 2022 GLE featuring fun fall activities and how they align with the early learning and development guidelines. We'll start with Child Care Resources mission, which is to nurture and sustain child-centered, anti-racist early learning communities.
We'll do the solidarity statement. We'll begin our time together by acknowledging with gratitude the land that we are on. We recognize that we are on the stolen lands of the Coast Salish people who stewarded these lands and are still here today. We also acknowledge that the land we occupy was built by the labor of enslaved Africans. At CCR, we stand against all forms of racism and ask that you stand together with us to end racism in all of its forms.
Okay, and our agenda for this presentation, we will explore some fun fall activities for the different interest areas of your classroom, and then explain how they connect with the Washington State Early Learning and Development Guidelines, and have some fun.
Our first activity that we will talk about takes place in the dramatic play area. And there are two different activities that I decided to outline here. The first one is back to school. So in the dramatic play area, the children can pretend to be teachers and students. Props you can use for this activity include chairs and desks, dry erase or chalkboards, pencils, blank paper, or worksheets, which is if they're pretending to be elementary age students, this could be an appropriate time for that. Backpacks and a bell to signify the start and end of classes that they may be pretending to take part in. The class can also paint a very large box, yellow and red with the lights and the stop sign. You can put that in the center and they can pretend to be coming to and from school each day. Another activity is creating an apple orchard or pumpkin patch, either inside the class in the dramatic play area, or if you have room outside, you could also put a dramatic play area outside as well. Some props to use for these include small pumpkins, gourds, or apples for selling and buying. And you can use real ones, or you can make fake ones out of either just crumpled up paper or doing paper mache projects. You can use fake money and a register for buying and selling the goods. You can create an apple tree out of brown, red, and green paper. For some literacy ideas, you can add different recipes and cookware for the children to bake pumpkin pie, or pumpkin bread or apple pie. And for the ELDG alignments, this really covers all of them. About me, my family, and my culture, building relationships as they're moving through their dramatic play. They will be using a lot of their pro-social skills. Touching, seeing, hearing, and moving around, especially the fine motor skills with this certain activity. Growing up healthy, learning about some of those fall produce, the vegetables and the fruit, and why they might be healthy. Communicating and learning about my world as well. And the next activity is for science and nature, and this is doing a scavenger hunt. So materials you will need are clipboards, a pencil, and a scavenger hunt sheet that's listed on the screen. So the activity would be to create a scavenger hunt featuring parts of nature that can be found either in your backyard or in a nearby park that you might visit. You could also use a pre-made scavenger hunt sheet that you can find online. Just make sure that the sheet has pictures that the children can look at and look for on their walk or while they're outside. And explore the area with the children and search for the items on the list, crossing them off as you go. This activity really covers communicating as they learn to match the pictures and the words, and then also learning about my world for the science and nature aspect of this.
Next, we'll speak about the gross motor activities. Autumn is a great time to spend outside to catch the last bit of summer before the rain and cool weather comes. There are many opportunities to assist children exploring their gross motor skills. Today, we will discuss 2 gross motor activities that can tie into your fall lesson plans that the children will enjoy. The first will be a nature community walk. Prior to taking the walk, discuss the changes in nature that occur when summer changes into fall. When the children are walking, have them observe the natural phenomena that occurs during this time, looking for spiders, spider webs, leaves on the ground, different colors of leaves on the trees as well on the ground. Have the children look for the different animals like squirrels, rabbits, and birds. Also have the children gauge the temperature and discuss the clothes they are wearing as comparing it to their summer clothes. The next gross motor activity will be tree yoga. So this activity has the children acting out how trees would look like in each of the seasons. Each season, the tree would do a different movement. So the springtime, you would describe what happens to trees to the children in the spring, and then you would have them do an associated movement to the weather. For example, in the spring, you have the children move like a tree in the breeze. In the summertime, describe what happens to trees during that time. You can have the children stretch their bodies out like a tree, giving out shade for the children to play under them. For the fall time, you can describe the things that happen to trees during that time of year and have the children fall to the floor as if they were the leaves during the fall season. And then in the winter time, describe what happens to trees during that season. And then you can have the children acting out the shaking of the leaves from the trees. So have them shaking like as if they were shivering from the cold air and getting rid of the leaves that were on them. You can go through a couple of cycles so the children can learn the pattern of the seasons, as well as you can include extreme weather conditions and see how the children movements that they create, like an earthquake, a tornado, or a blizzard, just for fun and to make it change it up a little bit. And the early learning developmental guidelines that these activities align with are touching, seeing, hearing, and moving around, the large muscle movement for the gross motor, as well as the sensory motor for using their eyes, the sense of smell, taste, and touch, and hearing. The next would be learning about my world. So the knowledge, they're getting a lot of cognition knowledge based off of listening to the teacher and just, looking around their world and observing, as well as science, being able to classify things, doing differences and comparisons as well.
Okay, thank you. And the next area we're going to talk about is creative arts. So the activity that I'm highlighting would be fall leaf sun catchers. And the materials that you would need for this would be paper plates with the centers cut out. If you have younger toddlers, you could have these cut out ahead of time. If you have preschoolers and pre-Kers, they can work on cutting them out themselves. Contact paper, at least 2 sheets per each child. And you can have leaves that you collect from outside. Maybe you go on a nature walk and you collect leaves, or you can have them bought, or even you can even have the kids talk about the colors of the leaves that are changing, and then have them cut out their own leaves. And for this activity, you would need to gather everything that is needed. Talk to the children, explain what the expectations are and what they will be doing with them. You can use the sticky side of the contact paper to place their leaves on, and when done, stick the other contact paper side down to hold the leaves in place. For younger children, you can assist them in helping them tape their contact paper rings to their sun catcher rings to their contact paper. And for older children, they can do this themselves and then hang them up in the window to enjoy all season long. And then the early learning and development guideline, it can really fall under many, but the two that I'm going to highlight are touching, seeing, hearing, and moving around. So when they're coloring and taping and cutting, they're using their fine muscles. So developing their hand strength and control needed to grab things with a pincer grasp. And then the second one would be learning about my world, and this could fall under science. So playing with materials of different textures, and can also begin to understand the difference between same and different. As you're talking about the leaves and the children are doing this activity, you can talk about the different shapes, whether leaves have the same pattern, do they have the same color, and introducing them to that same and different concept.
All right, next we're going to talk about math using loose parts found in the fall time. So the materials that you'll need are leaves of all shapes, sizes, and colors, acorns, pine cones, maybe some pine needles, and really any other natural material that you have available to you in your environment. You just want to make sure that they're non-toxic and an appropriate size, so no one puts them in the box. So one of the activities I'm going to highlight is a sorting activity you can try. So you can have a selection of all of these materials, and your students can sort them out and then count them. Count along with them by pointing to each item and count in order to teach one-to-one correspondence in number order. They can then also sort them by color, they can sort them by shape, and even by material if you have more than one kind. For older children, you can give them a number and have them put the amount of that item with the corresponding number. And there are a couple of other activities that I'll highlight that you can use these same materials for. You can try patterning, which you would do by creating a simple pattern and increase the difficulty as needed. So to make it simpler, you could do just an alternating pattern. If you wanted to make it a little bit trickier, you could use more than 2 items or make it different from the alternating pattern. Another activity you can try is creating a leaf graph so that kids can choose their favorite. And so basically they'll choose their favorite, and then you'll add up the total in each column and then help them to identify which one is like the most and which one is like the least. And these align with the early learning developmental guidelines with the first one, touching, seeing, hearing, and moving around. And with small muscles for fine motor skills, communication and literacy, so speaking and listening, and learning about my world, cognition, math, and science.
Okay, and an activity you can use to promote language and literacy is an alphabet harvest. And the objective is for the children to recognize and identify the different letters of the alphabet. So to get started, write each letter onto different fall-related objects, such as the wooden discs pictured here, artificial pumpkins, leaves, or apples, whatever you choose, and then scatter them around your outdoor space. Next, the children can harvest the alphabet by finding and collecting each of the letters. And this activity can be adapted to the different age groups and developmental stages. So for the younger children, you can help them to identify the letters they find. For the older children, you can make it a bit more challenging by calling out specific letters or asking them to find the first letter of their name, depending on their skill level. And also some of the older children might be able to help with writing the letters. And this alphabet harvest incorporates several components of the early learning and development guidelines. So within the topic of touching, seeing, hearing, and moving around, the children utilize their fine motor skills by using the muscles in their hands to pick up the different objects, as well as their gross motor skills while walking or running to find the letters, and then bending or squatting to pick them up. This activity also supports communication or literacy. It encompasses the area of speaking and listening because the children will practice responding to the directions that you give and may engage in back and forth dialogue with you and their peers as they work to identify the different letters. The harvest also encourages reading skills as the children learn to identify the individual letters of the alphabet. And then also within the section of learning about my world, the activity supports cognition by providing the opportunity for children to learn to recognize letters through hands-on sensory play. There may also be a math component if you expand on the activity and maybe count how many letters each child has found or how many total letters there are in the alphabet. And for science, you can begin the activity by talking about the different seasons, the weather, what fruits and vegetables grow during fall, and what it means to harvest those fruits and vegetables.
Also going to take a moment to talk about holidays, as the fall is usually the start, at least in Western culture in the United States, the dominant culture, kind of the time where a lot of those dominant holidays we see everywhere. When we want to talk, celebrating holidays is a deeply personal and meaningful for many people. Many of them are grounded in fun traditions, and it makes sharing them with children very appealing. As early learning professionals, we want to be sure that we approach holidays with a culturally responsive and inclusive manner so that all children and families feel welcome. We want to teach different traditions accurately and respectfully. And in order to do that, here are some tips to keep in mind. The first is to encourage children and families to share what holidays they celebrate at home. This can be done during the enrollment and intake process through questions on intake forms or conversations in those initial meetings that you have. It shows that you're interested in what holidays are meaningful to them specifically and why. You can have these conversations also with the group of children. It allows the children to learn more about other customs and cultures in their classroom community, and it helps them gain a deeper understanding of a world outside their own. You also want to acknowledge and honor every group that is represented in the classroom. So we want every child to be able to see themselves represented in their classroom community, and holidays are a meaningful way to do this. And one way to do this is being aware and showing that awareness in the actual classroom environment. You want to be sure to keep what you have in the classroom meaningful and to avoid the tourist approach. The tourist approach is really kind of taking one aspect of a culture that is well known and using that to represent everything where that actually may not be true. So ask families. I think one of the best ways to do this is to ask families to bring in items that are important to them, or to come in and actually share the traditions with the class themselves. And this way it ensures that the holiday is represented accurately and meaningful to that child and family. You also want to be sure to allow space for families who choose not to celebrate holidays. This is also another conversation that can be had during the intake process, so that some families, they still feel welcome and included in the daily life of the program.
Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you at future presentations.